What's going on Facebook? What's going on YouTube? I appreciate you guys for being here. The first story I want to talk about is this video clip, which I'm going to play in about 30 seconds or so, which is of Australia, where they're talking about their governments explaining they have 7 deaths by COVID. And I'm just going to let the clip speak for itself. I'm not going to say too much about it. And then we're going to listen to Senator Rand Paul. He grills the HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra on natural immunity and the mandates and what he thinks. And, you know, that's what we're going to do. So we'll wait a few seconds for everybody to come in. And once again, Facebook, I got some clip outs. You know, Rand Paul's going to say his thing, but I know they love to censor Rand Paul. They hate when he says things in his position of politics, which is creepy because a lot of politicians say a lot of stupid things all the time. I mean, politicians are not, no offense, I'm not like the most impressed by that, you know, genre of job market, etc. So the fact that they always like to censor, that's ridiculous. But let's listen as everyone's coming in. How are you guys doing? I appreciate you. Let's listen in Australia. This is a news clip I just found fascinating. We're just going to start out with it as people are coming in. Let's listen.
As the Minister said, tragically today we announced the deaths of 7 people who have lost their lives to COVID-19, 4 women and 3 men. 1 person was in their 40s, 1 person in their 50s, 2 people in their 70s, 2 people in their 80s, and 1 person who was in their 90s. All of those individuals had underlying health conditions. 1 person was not vaccinated, 3 people had received 1 dose of a COVID vaccine, and 3 people had received 2 doses of a COVID vaccine.
So that's in New South Wales, I believe. That's what the NSW behind her is. So they said 7 people died from COVID. All of them had underlying conditions, all of them. 6 out of 7 of them were vaccinated and 1 of them was unvaccinated. I didn't say that. That's what she said. I saw that going around and I was like, interesting. So is that worth the police state that they're doing in Australia? By the way, guys, there's a lot of Europe, I think Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, they're starting to roll back restrictions completely. Like they probably are better than America at this point. It's pathetic as an American citizen saying that I love America, but we're being beaten out with freedom by Sweden and Norway now. And places like Australia, which used to be super free, are now locking people down. In New South Wales, once again, that clip, she said 7 people died of COVID on that day. All of them had underlying conditions, and 6 out of 7 of them were vaccinated to some extent. Fascinating, fascinating. So we're going to play this Rand Paul clip real quick of Rand Paul in the Senate. But real quick, I got to hold this up. First, I'm going to do it for Facebook, then I'll do it for YouTube. So this is Bloomberg. So any Facebook censors, and then I got the one for YouTube too. I apologize. This is Bloomberg right there. You can read it, right? I anomaly didn't make this up. There's no conspiracy theory. It says, previous COVID prevents Delta infection better than Pfizer shot. That's Bloomberg, okay? And in that article, I'm just going to read, it says that it's the largest real-world analysis comparing natural immunity gained from an earlier infection. This is the one for YouTube. I don't really care about YouTube as much. I'm not doing as good on YouTube, but that's fine. We like YouTube too. It's a Bloomberg article, okay? Bloomberg covered the Israeli data, which I quote, the largest real-world analysis comparing natural immunity. And that's what Rand Paul's about to bring up. So this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's not a flat earther. It's not a, right-wing talking point. It's not something that was invented on the dark web of 8chan or whatever they're going to say. This is according to Bloomberg, the largest real-world analysis comparing natural immunity, where they actually found and published, once again, I just got to hold this up because it's like, people think I'm like crazy or something, or I'm not. I like good medicine. I have no problem with medicine. I'm not an anti blah, blah, blah. This is a Bloomberg article. You could read it for yourself. Previous COVID prevents Delta infection better than Pfizer shot. That's what that says, okay? I don't make this up. I'm not the trial. I don't live in Israel. I don't do, million people studies, multi-million people studies. That's what they did. So let's listen to Rand Paul just completely destroy, in my opinion, the Health and Human Services, HHS Secretary.
Are you familiar with an Israeli study that had 2.5 million patients and found that the vaccinated group was actually 7 times more likely to get infected with COVID than the people who had gotten COVID naturally?
Senator, I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm not familiar with that study.
Well, you think you might want to be if you're going to travel the country insulting the millions of Americans, including NBA star Jonathan Isaac, who have had COVID, recovered, look at a study with 2.5 million people and say, well, you know what? It looks like my immunity is as good as a vaccine or not. And in a free country, maybe I ought to be able to make that decision. Instead, you've chosen to travel the country calling people like Jonathan Isaac and others, myself included, flat earthers. We find that very insulting, goes against the science. Are you a doctor or a medical doctor?
I've worked over 30 years on health policy.
You're not a medical doctor. Do you have a science degree? And yet you travel the country calling people flat earthers who have had COVID, looked at studies of millions of people, and made their own personal decision that their immunity they naturally acquired is sufficient. But you presume somehow to tell over 100 million Americans who have survived COVID that we have no right to determine our own medical care. You alone are on high, and you've made these decisions, a lawyer with no scientific background, no medical degree.
I mean, I could play the whole clip. You could listen to the whole thing. I'm sure they're going to try to censor the whole clip because he says some other stuff. But what he's saying is, you know, people like Xavier, let me see how to pronounce his last name, Becerra, I don't know how to say it. He's the Human Health Services Secretary. He's not a doctor. He's not a scientist. He's been, I guess, a politician or a bureaucrat, you know, working in health on the bureaucratic side. Rand Paul is a doctor. I'm not here saying that you can't be a doctor, right? Oh, you have to be a doctor. You have to be this. No, if you research and have an informed decision and you make, you know, a fair argument, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a plumber, a truck driver, a teacher, or a rapper. Get it? No, I'm just kidding. But in general, I don't care who you are. You know, they try to paint this picture with their propaganda that anybody who wants to, you know, wait a little bit or opt out of this particular medication, they're trying so hard to say they're conspiracy theorists. Literally, he's not exaggerating. This guy is literally trying to compare people to flat earthers and say, oh, the flat earthers are, you know, they're joining the anti-vaxxers and the flat earthers to just keep pumping no matter how not true it is. You know, oh, flat earther is like a conspiracy theorist, which is like, you know, anti-vax. It's all these words that mean nothing. So what Rand Paul's saying is, you know, myself, Jonathan Isaac, people like Bradley Beal, when you listen to us talk, say what you want, we're not uninformed. We're reading the data. We're reading this Bloomberg article that says that in Israel, the largest real-world analysis of natural infection versus the Pfizer shot, that they're coming to the conclusion that the natural immunity in their study, I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all, is actually doing better. You know, the original infection versus the Delta variant. That's what they're saying. So that's a real study. Fauci was asked a question. I don't want to play the clip again. I played it so many times, but you can go back to my last video, watch it. Fauci was asked this question. Sanjay Gupta on CNN with Anderson Cooper asked Dr. Fauci about that question. I really should probably find the clip, but you know, he says, what do you think about that study out of Israel that says that natural immunity might be just as good or better as the Pfizer shot? And Fauci's like, well, you know, we should talk about it. You watch the whole clip. He's like, you know, it's definitely something to talk about. Like they might have a point there. Like he's admitting that it might. But the only criticism he's had is, well, we don't know how long natural immunity lasts, which I believe is probably true, right? Who knows how long it lasts? Dr. Fauci's not wrong there. But here's another thing. The question I have for Dr. Fauci, and this is not anti this or that, I'm not against medication in general, but how long does the booster last? Do you know how long does the double shot last of Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson? How long does that last? So yeah, you could say the only criticism Fauci ever had of natural immunity, the biggest study out of Israel, which is what Rand Paul's talking about, the only criticism he has is we don't know how long natural immunity lasts. But we also don't know how long the vaccine lasts because clearly not as long, not that long if they're getting booster shots in Israel and Biden's already gotten a booster and there's people in America, mostly over 65 who've gotten a booster. So now our question, you know, just like he asked the question, how long does natural immunity last? You're allowed as a citizen to say, well, how long does the booster last? Because whether you get the booster shot or not, I'm genuinely interested, like, how long does this thing last? 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months? What does it do? Because originally, I have that clip as well. The CDC director said that she believed, according to her data, that, you couldn't transmit or spread the virus if you got the vaccine. And then the 95% effective number in Reuters in February went down to, I believe, 39% in the Israeli study. So these numbers are always fluctuating. So he's acting like as if natural immunity is the only immunity that changes over time. And, Rand Paul really sticks it to him. And it's just crazy. And I don't want to ramble on and on. I want to answer some questions and probably take off in a little bit.